Hi everyone, I'm Cindy with TV 99 North Mississippi. Welcome to Speak Up, a show about various topics that lets you voice your opinion. And tonight, my guest is Mr. Jerry Shiverdecker of NA Newsweb, and the question is about the sign ordinance here in New Albany. Jerry, should we have a sign ordinance in New Albany?
That's a very good question. I believe I could persuade a panel of intelligent, unbiased citizens of New Albany that we have no need for a sign ordinance at all. When you consider the problems that New Albany has with too much iron oxide in the water, broken up streets and sidewalks, a lot of growth we have enjoyed, and the need to plan better for that growth, it's hard to see how signs should get any priority at all. I think the impetus for this sign ordinance probably came about because in a number of years ago, it was pretty common to see people who had these little trailers with signs on them, and they'd change the letters, and the signs might have flashing lights all the way around, and they'd pull these up right next to the streets and roadways, and it was a distraction. And I think people thought those were sort of, to use a good Southern term, tacky and unsightly. And I guess they were. Now, it needs to be said that probably was not a call for a sign ordinance. If you simply had a traffic rule, I mean, if it's a distraction to traffic, it's a traffic problem. It's like running a stop sign. But nonetheless, it's hard to justify it. But I would say that the real reason we have a sign ordinance is that the board and mayor in 2006 wanted us to have one. It's the nature of rulers, whether they're kings or congressmen or presidents or local aldermen in New Albany. It's the nature of rulers to want to make rules. And never mind whether the rules are needed, I think I could make a good argument that the sign ordinance in New Albany is a solution looking for a problem.
Well, what about the problems in 2006?
The ordinance that was passed in June 2006 has a number of problems. It's most observably, it's very poorly written, and it's imprecise. There are many contradictions, sometimes contradictions within a single page on what isn't allowed. For the downtown New Albany area, which is referred to as C1 zoning, the 2006 ordinance provides that the Main Street organization will have a role in deciding what signs can and cannot be posted in that area. This role is assigned in the ordinance to the Main Street Design Committee, which has the power to tell merchants what signs they can and cannot have. Main Street is a private organization, although it gets a great deal of funding from the taxpayers of New Albany. It's not a part of the city government. The mayor and aldermen have no role at all in choosing the members of it. Frequently, nobody even knew who the members of the sign committee were, including members of the sign committee. I attended a meeting in 2016 in which a new merchant in town had a sign that they were proposing to put on their building. This new merchant had a store with some lines of merchandise that were direct competitors to another nearby store. And on the Main Street Design Committee, the night they considered this ordinance, both the husband and the wife of that store were on the design committee. Now that's a pretty bad instance of home cooking. I mean, it'd be like going somewhere to play a football game or a baseball game, and knowing that all the referees were cousins and friends of the local coach and the local team. It's just at that same meeting, one of the members of the sign committee asked in all innocence, we should have somebody read this sign ordinance so we know what it says. And I thought that was just an exceptionally good idea.
I think so as well.
The old ordinance, the 2006 ordinance, is written so that a merchant might have to wait 60 to 90 days before they get a decision on whether or not they can put their sign up.
That's quite a...
These people have invested money in merchandise and startup costs,
Right.
rent, and so on and so forth, and they're left hanging in the wind until the city can decide whether they can or cannot put up a sign to tell people what they're selling. Another problem with the 2006 ordinance is making sensible exceptions or variances to the sign code. Essentially, these have been impossible to get. Even when all members of the city board and the zoning board have agreed that the sign was good, that an exception should be made, that the sign looked great, they could not summon up the courage to vote for a variance. There was the city attorney would explain to them how that they had the authority to make a variance. But for whatever reason, they just couldn't quite work themselves up to do it.
What those reasons are would be
I
very
don't,
interesting to know.
I don't have any idea. I think it's, it may have to do with the fact that elected officials just don't want to offend anybody. They don't want to go out but they're elected officials. It's a political system, and they're paid to make the political decisions. So for whatever reason, they've not wanted to do it. And these are good people. I know all of them. It's just for whatever reason they've been very, very timid about that. The best example I can think of is a few years ago, a local veterinarian was retiring, and two veterinarians from Marshall County, from Holly Springs, bought this man's veterinary practice when he retired. The sign that was in front of this veterinary practice building out on Highway 30 West was literally falling apart. It's an old, sort of a poorly made wooden sign to start with. The letters were falling off of it. I mean, it was just a real eyesore. The veterinarians from Holly Springs that bought this practice bought a well-designed, professionally made sign to replace that old broken down sign, paid something over $20,000 for it.
Wow.
And the city board, but the problem with it was in what is called an internally lighted monument sign in the 2006 ordinance, and we won't get too far off into that. But let's just say that for technical reasons, it was outside the regulations. The city board, all of them agreed that the sign looked great, that they could not have any reason not to have the sign. As a matter of fact, in that meeting, an attorney who was representing the veterinarians from Holly Springs asked the board to give him some reason that they wouldn't grant the variance. And they were totally silent. They could not come up with a reason. It's just a matter of variances under the old ordinance being very hard to get. And that, by the way, that shabby old sign is still on Highway 30 West. And the nice new sign, the veterinarians took it and installed it in front of their clinic in Holly Springs. The net result of all this is that New Albany has developed a reputation for being hostile to new businesses. There have been instances in which people have decided against opening new businesses in New Albany because of our inhospitable attitude.
Well, is there anything being done to remedy the situation?
There's something underway. Another instance of a sign being no variance given happened just last year. The doctors who own internal medicine pediatric clinic, IMPC, had built and equipped a new building. I don't know what was in it, but I'm sure several millions of dollars. A beautiful new building. I mean, the nicest such facility in 5 or 6 counties. They had a sign designed, a well-designed, professionally made sign. it too had a problem with part of it being a message board being internally lighted. I attended the meeting of the zoning board, which had first crack at this. Every single member of the zoning board said they thought the sign looked great, that they had no objection to it. They thought it would look terrific there in front of that beautiful new building, but they didn't think they had the authority to grant the variance. And they're probably right. Anyway, they kicked it up to the Board of Aldermen. The Board of Aldermen, not one of them could find any reason to not give a variance to put up that sign, except that, well, it doesn't comply with the ordinance. And again, the city attorney explained to them very carefully, very thoroughly, that they had the authority to grant a variance so those doctors could put up their sign. But they just couldn't summon the courage to do it. At that point, a movement sort of got underway. The first alderwoman, Amy Livingston, sort of took up that issue, and there was sort of a consensus on the board that we needed a new sign ordinance. So Alderwoman Livingston took it up, and over the last several months with City Attorney Russell and the Code Inspector Thomas, and help from some other folks that have been involved, they've drafted a new ordinance. I have a copy of what I'm told is a near final draft of that ordinance. And I understand that that may come up before the board in March or April. We've been anticipating it for several months.
Well, how would it be different? What would be?
Well, let me just add one more thing about this. On the IMPC sign, just within the last few days, the city board met in a special meeting and gave the IMPC clinic a variance to put up that sign. They granted a variance. They did it in a meeting that the public really didn't know anything about, and I'm not suggesting it was an illegal meeting. I mean, it was properly done. But in a meeting where nobody was there, they gave the doctors permission to put that sign up. I'm told that they decided to do it because they knew that the new sign ordinance would permit the sign that they wanted to put up. To your question, how is it going to be different? Based on the draft I've seen, and I emphasize it's not a final draft, it seems to me that there have been some improvements, but there are also some problems, same as under the old ordinance, that are likely to continue under the new one. The improvements I see is that it's much better written. It's much more rationally written. It's easier to tell what the rules are. The role of the Main Street organization is completely eliminated in the new ordinance, and in the draft I've seen, and that's good for New Albany and good for Main Street. It was a problem for them because it got them nothing but ill will and did nothing for them at all. There in the new ordinance, in the draft of the new ordinance, there is a section pertaining to signs along that part of Interstate 22 that runs through New Albany. And that's become, with so many new businesses being built along there in the last 10 years, and certainly more to come, that's an important thing, that it's clearly stated in the new ordinance what can and cannot be done as far as signs along I-22. Among the problems with the new ordinance, going back to what signs can be put up downtown in the C1 district, or what some people call the historic district. Although Main Street no longer has a role, the words Main Street don't even appear in the ordinance. What has been put instead is a provision for the mayor and board to appoint what's called designees. Designees to advise the mayor and the board on whether or not the signs in the city in the new ordinance, or signs that might be erected in the new ordinance, are allowed. That section is very vague. As a matter of fact, the copy I've seen, the type I think is actually in purple ink, which indicates they really haven't decided what they're going to do. But it doesn't say how these folks are going to be picked. It doesn't say whether a designee is designated for one sign or for the rest of his natural days. We don't know, but we still, that part of it for the signs in the so-called historic district is still, to me, has not been completely cleared up in the new ordinance. Under the new ordinance, it can still take a long time for a merchant to get a decision on whether or not they can put up a sign. And I suggested to one of the folks working on this, a guy who's a good friend of mine, that you guys need to simply say, okay, the zoning officer has 7 days to say yes you can or no you can't. And then the city board has 25 days or whatever to say yes you can or no you can't. And that fellow said to me, well, 7 days might not be quite right. And that's correct. I mean, 7 days is just a number I threw out, but there should be some kind of rule, perhaps 30 days, that from the time the city receives a complete application with all the drawings and so forth that are required, that within, say, 30 days of the time they receive that application, they need to say yes or no. Yes, you can, or no, you can't. And otherwise, these folks have made investments that they have no way to advertise, and that's
right.
just that's wrong.
No, it is because you have to let people know where you are and what's in the building. I mean, that's
In virtually all these
or
instances, it's again for the city board to decide. They have to just step up and make the political decisions that they're elected to make. The zoning board is involved in the old ordinance, and frankly, I think it's been a real problem for the zoning board because that's not really what they're designed to do. They've taken a lot of heat because of it, heat that's been deflected from the city board of aldermen. Maybe that's why we have it in the first place. But if the zoning officer decides that the sign does not comply, and if the business owner wants to have an appeal on that should go directly to the Board of Aldermen. I mean, and the next time the board meets, they should take that up and say, yes, you can, or no, we can't.
Yeah.
And they should not be saying, well, we're going to think about that for 90 days. They need to have the courage to make a decision.
Yeah.
And somewhere in the new ordinance, I would hope there would be something in there that sets a very specific time limit, because this business has been going on for 60, 90, 100. The doctors at IMPC have waited 6 months.
I was going to ask how
6
long.
months since that beautiful new building was built and equipped. Millions of dollars worth of investment, I'm sure. And finally, within the last 10 days, they got a decision that said, oh yeah, you can put it up. There's no excuse for that. And that is not, in the draft I have seen, that is not prevented in the new ordinance.
Not prevented. What do you think is the single biggest problem with the ordinance in New Albany?
With the existing ordinance, and some of these problems are going to continue with the new ordinance. The single biggest problem is the uneven, unfair, inconsistent enforcement of the side ordinance. The best way to put up a new sign in New Albany, if you open a new business and you want to put up a new sign, the best way to do it is to have the sign designed, built, and put it up, and don't even tell them you're going to do it. Because, and that's happened numerous times, if you put up a sign that is totally outside what is allowed under the 2006 ordinance, they won't make you take it down. I'll give you, there's a number of examples, but I'll give you one that's I think particularly good. Fresenius is a national organization, actually an international organization, that does dialysis for people. A couple of years ago, they put a nice new building out on Dunn Mill Road, which is a great addition to New Albany. That means that folks getting dialysis don't have to go all the way to Tupelo or Memphis to get it done. So they put up their nice new building. They put up a nice new internally lighted monument sign to advertise that this is Fresenius Dialysis Center. The powers that be, elected and appointed officials in New Albany, did not know the sign was there until I told them. They didn't even know it was there. That was a couple of years ago. I drove by there a few nights ago, and now 18, 20 months later, whatever it's been, the sign is still there. And nobody's made it take them down. I'm not suggesting they should be made to take it down. I mean, I think the sign looks great. But the simple fact is that because they did not ask for permission, they put their new sign up, it looks good, and the board has not done anything to make them or any other of several people that have done that take it down. So the best way to put a sign up in New Albany in the past has been simply to do it and not ask anybody. The rule of do is the one is the one that works. Sometimes the rules are enforced, sometimes they're not. I really don't think, except in the instance I mentioned of the two people on the sign committee that were competitors of the person who wanted the sign. I don't know of any other instance in which there was really any malfeasance, or malfeasance would be too strong a word, but any untenable reason why it shouldn't be done. It's just that it's been inconsistent. Some people have asked for permission, some haven't, and I've known of instances in which people wanted to put up signs that were clearly outside of what the 2006 ordinance provided, and they were allowed to put those signs up. And the signs look great. I have no objection to them at all. I think they look terrific, but it's just been very inconsistent. Another problem with this 2006 ordinance that continues, as a matter of fact, is made worse under the ordinance as the new ordinance as currently drafted. The 2006 ordinance provides for a fine, a one-time fine of $500 if you violate the city's sign rules. The new ordinance, as drafted, provides for a fine of up to $1,000 per day if you put up a sign that is outside of what the ordinance allows. So my question is, if they cannot impose a fine of $500 a month, or $500 one time, and I don't know of a single instance in which they've ever fined anybody, where are they going to work up the backbone to fine somebody $30,000 a month? I don't think that's going to happen.
That seems, with the ordinances, how they are, and the cost of them, and just what they entail, it seems inhospitable to me in a way to businesses coming to New Albany. It's like, we don't really want you here.
Well, that's true. And New Albany has had a lot of good things going for it. I mean, New Albany has grown a lot in the last in the 18 years I've lived here. We have a lot of things that happened. The park along the river. I mean, the Tanglefoot Trail. All kinds of things that have happened that have really made New Albany a very desirable place to be.
Absolutely.
The park alone, with that interstate running through that park, that's the most attractive thing you see between Birmingham and Memphis if you're driving on I-22. It really is. So we have a lot going for us, and these sign ordinances and the way that they are enforced, instead of inviting people to come to New Albany to open new businesses, to provide new services, new merchandise, whatever, for our people, and to attract people from out of town to come here and spend their money and contribute to our sales tax collections. The net effect of the sign ordinance is to say, we don't want you to come. We're going to make it complicated. We're going to make it difficult for you to come to New Albany, Mississippi and open your shop. We're going to do what we can to make that a real problem for you, no matter how much money you may have spent on merchandise or rent or other startup costs. We kind of don't want you here. And here's how. Here's our sign ordinance.
Well, it's certainly an obstacle, and it certainly needs work.
It does, and I don't think anybody in New Albany, certainly not on the city, but I don't think anybody on the board, either in 2006 or today, said, let's sit down and write a rule that will make people not want to come to New Albany to open businesses. I don't think they did that.
No.
But by not thinking,
Right.
and by not having the courage to make sensible exceptions to their general rules, that's exactly what's happened. And the people are wary of coming to New Albany, invest money in a new store, a new restaurant, whatever, because of the sign ordinance. And that's, I think that's just pretty provably true.
Well, hopefully this new one in 2018 will be better.
If we can get the enforcement right, if we can get in,
It has to be the follow through.
if we can
What it
become, again, the new ordinance as written does not make the enforcement any better than it's been for the last 12 years. I mean, it still will not give the city officials, elected and appointed, any more courage than they've had in the past. And the fact that the fine is like $30,000 a month potentially, rather than $500 one time, would make it even harder to summon up the courage to do something.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure. I don't think
strict enforcement is going to be tougher going forward than it has been in the past.
absolutely will.
We'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
enjoyed
much
it.
for being with us today.
I've enjoyed it.
And guys, do you take on the news web, people writing in, or if you want to contact us, if you have something to say about this or would like to talk to us on the air about this matter, let us know at TV99 North Mississippi. You can email me at cindy@tv99northmississippi.com. And
They can, we will post just about anything anybody sends us. I mean, as long as it's written in reasonably good English sentences, we'll post it. And all they have to do is send it to news@nanewsweb.com. And if they have comments to make about the signed ordinance or anything else, we'll be pleased to have them.
okay, that's great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again, and watch us on YouTube, and check us out on Facebook and Twitter. And I'm Cindy with TV99 North Mississippi, and thanks for watching.